What's up, guys? My name is Jerry, and today's video is going to be on the Los Angeles Clippers, and we're going to be talking about why the NBA should be scared of this team, and we're going to jump right into the video. Now, looking at the Los Angeles Clippers so far this season, they have a record of 27-28, and that's good enough for 8th place in the Western Conference. And when we take things into context, this is a really good season for the Los Angeles Clippers because, Paul George, we've seen him play a minimum amount of games this year. We haven't seen too much Paul George this season. And when he was there, he was playing really well. But, he went down with an injury, and then there's no guarantee that he's coming back this season. And then also, when you got a top 5, top 7 player in the league like Kawhi Leonard, who the Clippers haven't seen at all this season. And to me, man, when both are healthy, I have Paul George and Kawhi Leonard as 2 of the top 15 players in the NBA. So when you're missing that type of production and you're still able to be the 8th seed in the Western Conference, and then still to have a better record in the Los Angeles Lakers, who have LeBron James, Anthony Davis, and Russell Westbrook, I think that says a lot about the Los Angeles Clippers. And to me, recently they made I would say this trade is a power move. I would say this is a really big trade. And it may not be no big names, and it may not be a blockbuster deal, but I feel like the Clippers did something that, that's going to make their team very scary, in the near future. So, last week they pulled the trigger on the trade, acquiring Norman Powell and Robert Covington for Eric Bledsoe, Keon Johnson, and Justice Winslow with a 2nd round pick. And that's a really good trade for them because the Clippers they didn't use any trade pieces that were valuable to them. Eric Bledsoe, great playmaker, but Ty Lue said he felt like, Eric Bledsoe affected the spacing on the floor. And then Justice Winslow, they had him playing kind of like the 4 to sometimes the 5. And, his offense, sometimes, he would just make the Clippers too small. And then Keon Johnson was a 2021 pick who's only played 15 games this season. So the Clippers were able to, flip those guys into something, very valuable. And they hit the jackpot with the Portland Trailblazers going into, full tank mode, because that's the only thing that can indicate for the Trailblazers to pull the trade to pull the trigger on the trade like that, because, that's 2 of their, best players on that team. So, the Robert Covington and Norman Powell, they're going to help this Clipper teams in the short term, but especially in the long term. But, in the short term, you're adding a guy like Norman Powell, who's averaging, 19 points a game this season, shooting 40% from 3. And we seen him in his Clippers debut. He went for 28 points, looking really good in that Clippers uniform. But you get a guy who's just a perfect player for this team. He seems like the typical Tyronn Lue, player. He can shoot the 3 ball, he can switch on defense, and then he can have multiple roles. Norman Powell, if you need him to come off the bench, he'll come off the bench for you. If you need him to start and run with the starters, he'll run. He'll run with the starters. And then at Robert Covington, you get a guy who can literally guard, run through 4, maybe 1 through 4.5. He's gonna make guys work. He got that length, and he fit right in along with this Clippers, man. The Clippers, it feels like they get long 3-and-D wings that can shoot the ball and play defense, and that's what make this Clippers team, very nasty. So these guys are gonna, come in, have an immediate impact on this team, and probably help them, further their playoff push. Because even without those 2 guys, we've seen it all season long. This is a basketball team that you got to take serious. Now, with the thing that makes them scary in the very near future, if Kawhi and Paul George don't make it back this season, they're definitely gonna be back next season. And adding, Robert Covington, great player, really good, not a great player, but a really solid, really good player that, any contending team would love to have on their team, because he just adds defense and the ability to stretch the floor. But I'm just thinking about Norman Powell when he's going to be out there with Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, the amount of open threes that he's going to get is going to be insane. And plus, Norman Powell and Kawhi Leonard, they've won a championship together already, so they have that chemistry. And then when when Ty Lue throw a lineup out there with Robert Covington, Paul George, and Kawhi Leonard, players are going to have, opposing teams are going to have a tough time scoring on the perimeter on this team. So we just got to think about that, man. Just, adding solid role players to two guys like Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. And I think sometimes, people were saying that the Clippers need to go for a third star. But sometimes that isn't always, what's best. That's not always what's going to work out, because sometimes that's just add a lot of confusion when you add a third star to the team. We see it with the Los Angeles Lakers, adding Russell Westbrook. That's been a failure so far this season, and they're over there in cahoots trying to figure out how they're going to turn their season around. So what the Clippers went and did, they went and got some quality role players to surround, their two best players on the team, and I think that's going to work out great. And then we got to look at the the rest of the Clippers roster. Amir Coffey, called up from the G League, has been great for the Clippers this season. We're literally watching him get better and better every game. 6'8", like I said, 6'8", 3-and-D wing. That's all the Clippers love, man. Coach Lue, he want his players tall, lanky, and playing on the wing. And now with Amir Coffey shooting 38% from the three, his first game up against the Miami Heat, took 6 threes, made 5 of them. And now what we're seeing from him is he's improving as a playmaker. And that's something that the Clippers, that they vaguely need right now, somebody other than Reggie Jackson that can, make plays for the team. And now, we factor in Amir Coffey, young guys developing. Another young guy that we're developing right in front of our eyes is Terrence Mann. And he's not quite there yet, but we see him taking that step. We saw flashes of it in the playoffs last year, Game 6 against the Utah Jazz, against the Utah Jazz. He really came up clutch, and he had some big time buckets to close that series out. And I gotta sneeze. My fault. But anyways, Terrence Mann came up big against the he came up big against the Utah Jazz and played a big role, in pitting them out. So you got young guys on this team that's developing that you can throw into the rotation. Luke Kennard, he's been knocking down his 3-point shots this season, averaging 12 points per game. And then you got to factor in the veterans on this team that can play good quality minutes. Marcus Morris, a guy who's averaged 20 points per game in this league before, averaging 16 points right now. Who else they got? Reggie Jackson, man. Reggie Jackson reinvented himself with the LA Clippers and really revived his career. The last couple of playoffs, Reggie Jackson have been playing some really, really solid basketball, and he's become one of the go-to players for this Los Angeles Clippers team. And like I said, really solid player, legit 3-level scorer, can shoot the 3 ball, can shoot the middies, and then he can get into the paint, finish with the floater, or he can finish right at the rim with both hands. So, Reggie Jackson, really good player. And then you got Nicholas Batum, another wing that can play defense and shoot the 3 ball. Batum usually plays the 4. Sometimes they'll slide him down to the 3, but another 3-and-D player. And then, Ivica Zubac, I know he's not like a vet, but he's a young veteran. He done been in some playoff series. He got the experience, and he knows what that go-around is like in the NBA playoffs. So, this Clippers team, if it doesn't happen this season, I think at the very slightest next season, they're going to be right back at the top of the Western Conference, and they're going to be a team you have to take. They're going to be a team you have to take very seriously, because I'm not going to lie, don't let this LA hat fool you. I'm not from LA, man. I'm from Detroit, but I used to hate Kawhi Leonard when he played, on the Spurs, because to me he's like a small forward, Tim Duncan. He doesn't make many mistakes, and he's always, on his game, and his game isn't the flashiest. Like, it's just pure fundamental, which makes it even more frustrating to watch him go to work, on your team. So, Kawhi Leonard, to me, he's one of the most dangerous players in the NBA, because he plays mistake-free basketball. So, we're going to see what happens with the Clippers, man. See how long it takes to get these guys healthy. comment down below if you like that Norman Powell trade, and like this video if you enjoy, and then subscribe for more weekly content. We do this all the time, man. And that's curtains.